and mute my mic. So I gave you a lot of information on Tuesday on purpose. So today, okay? So take a deep breath. I'm talking slow. We're going to talk about things and take it time. So we talked about vaccines and the purpose for having them. And this is one of my soapboxes. And I love communicable diseases. I've been fascinated with them since high school when I got my first book. So I'm going to read to you, there is an author that's at Princeton right now, and he is trying to stop epidemics. So he has written this article, and just a few pieces of it to you. Take a look at the first two paragraphs I read to you were written in 1700s. The New World has felt its dreadful effects before, passing through in unpredictable ways over 200 years, inflicting pain and misery on the colonists and wiping out entire Native American societies. But it has been 19 years since Boston's last epidemic, time enough to raise a fresh generation of victims. So we're talking about Boston before we became a nation. When the first red light spots appeared, you could hope it might just be measles. But then the spots turned into bumps, the bumps filled with fluid and rose up like volcanic islands on the skin. Hundreds of them could clog the eyes, the air passages, and the entire body, to make even breathing an agony. The pustules gave off the stench of rotting flesh. Survivors were often blinded, crippled, or badly disfigured. That April, smallpox slipped quietly into the Boston harbor. At first, people tried to ignore the outbreak, similar to what we're doing now. There's a lot of denial that goes on. But then they started realizing that we had to do something to stop it. So 3 people raised up. One person's name, and this is in Boston, but one person's name was Onesimus. He was an African-born slave. Another one was Boylston, who was a doctor. And the last one's name is Mather. And Mather was neither a slave or he was just interested in medicine. He had lost 13 of his 15 children to infectious diseases and 2 of his wives. They said he went a little nuts. You can kind of see why, that much loss. But it became his passion to stop infectious diseases or to stop the smallpox. So we were talking to Onesimus one day, and since Onesimus was from Africa, in Africa they had been doing something called variolation, where they take someone who had smallpox wounds, and they would open it up, scrape the inside of it out, take a healthy person, make a small incision, and put that pus in them. What they didn't know was they were creating immunity, but they knew it worked, and it was stopping the spread of smallpox. They were able to, this guy Mather was able to get a few people to allow him to do that during that time period. So here's what happened. By the time the epidemic ended, 6,000 residents had smallpox, and 844 of those died. That was 15%. But just 2% of those inoculated by Mather and his group died. Okay, so they started seeing there's something with this. The improvements were made on this plan, and when the smallpox hit again in 1792, 9,200 residents were already inoculated, and only 232 people got the disease. Not died, but got the disease. You see, that this was 1700s, dark ages. They had not even created the germ theory yet, but they figured out that. In 1796, a guy named Jenner, he was also a doctor. Someone had experimented with him with smallpox when he was a child and decided to improve upon that also. He took an 8-year-old boy and gave him some material from a young woman that had cowpox. And it gave him a more manageable disease that went on to develop an injection with less virulent cowpox. Of course, there were some anti-vaxxers even back then, and they said no, because we're going to start acting like cows. We're going to start mooing. We're going to start doing this. We're going to start growing hair. Really freaky conspiracy theory stuff. So I would like to say that stopped it, But the King of Spain actually found out about this vaccine and had it created, and it sent out with his armada to all of his countries that he owned, and had everybody inoculated for free, the first vaccines, right? Cool. We still ended up losing 300 million people from smallpox, and this whole time it's been going on. But in 1980, the World Health Organization declared it over, that we no longer have smallpox because of the vaccine. John Pringle, he was in 1743, sort of looking around and noticing that the same water we were drinking with is the same water we're bathing and excrement is in. And he said, we need to have separate water, being dirty. He also noticed that in the army, because he was a soldier, that people that were living in the barracks were dying. So he said, no, you need to make a hospital a separate place. And all of these people need to have 36 square feet of space. You remember your algebra, 36 square feet is 6 by 6. We're still practicing social distancing, right? 6 by 6. That's our social distancing. They realized that then. So they went from having, how many people died? They went from 21.4% of people dying to 9.8%, just by cleaning the sheets, giving them some space. In 1850, the germ theory came about. Up until that point, they really thought germs just miraculously appeared in the body. It was because of some sort of tumors in your body that caused it. And these people came out and said, no, there are germs. Microorganisms are everywhere. I'm going to show you a picture of, let's see. Yes, you. But I have this thing for you. Okay, so this is a view of different plagues. So this one went on in 547 AD. It lasted for 48 years. 48 years. Sorry, people at home can't hear me. And then it goes on. The one that really got me was the AIDS epidemic. And we don't talk about it much anymore, but we still don't have a cure. We have a treatment. But we have lost 32 million people to AIDS. A little sobering. Show you one more picture. And I know it's hard to see, but I'm going to explain it all to you. These red circles and these little different lines right here are different diseases. So the largest one represents 500,000. You can see all these red circles, and then this little black dot right there is when the vaccine came in. So this is measles. This is how many people had the measles. Vaccine came in. It took a while to catch on. As you can see, it kind of has had some ebb and flow. This is chicken pox. We had the chicken pox for a while. Vaccine came in. It's getting better. Hepatitis B, again, so you can see all of this. My point is, we have never reached herd immunity without a vaccine. That's not political, that's science, and we're scientists. So if we were to have, and I figured all this up, we would have to have, and the minimum they're saying we have to have for the coronavirus is 70% of the people exposed, right? If we could possibly, to get herd immunity, and herd immunity just means, go back to me. Herd immunity just means that enough people have it to protect those who haven't. The theory is, up until Corona, it's always been 90%, but they're even giving us a little bit less than that. They're saying 70% of the people, if they're exposed. So, if we have 328 million people in the United States, we would have to have 228 million people exposed. And just working the math, we know that 1 to 2% of the people that get it will die. That is 4,500,000 people in the United States that would die. So I know the theory is, why don't we just all get exposed, we can create herd immunity. Number one, we've never been able to do it before. It's never happened. We can't For some reason, viruses ebb and flow. They stop for a little while and they come back, and they stop and they come. The vaccine is the only real way to get a herd immunity. So you have to get the vaccine. Well, even if we didn't get the vaccine, we would be like this for a while. So we're praying really hard. The United States has its hand in a lot of different vaccines right now, trying them. We're praying really hard that we get one that works. Okay, that's my speech. Let me go to one more thing before I go to our actual lecture. So this, I'm going to make it bigger. Now this is not a secret. This, you could go to the NCLEX website and see what it is. This is the breakdown, and I'll read those to you because I know they're small. This is the breakdown of the NCLEX test. This is how we base our tests. All my tests have this percentage of items on the test. Management of care, 20%. Safety and infection control, 12%. Health promotion and maintenance, 9%. Psychosocial integrity, 9%. Basic care and comfort, 9%. Pharmacology and parenteral therapies, 15%. Reduction of risk potential, 12%. And physiological adaptation is 14%. Nowhere on here is pathophysiology, right? So if you're getting stuck in the pathophysiology, you got to remember, that's why we say, what does the nurse need to do? That's why when I say, this is what the nurse needs to remember, go back and look at that part. All right, let us. And just like that. All right. This is, you don't have the slide. Don't panic. This is just an overview of what you learned on Tuesday. So we talked about infection control, the different types of PPE, and why we need to wear them. The nurse's role. Our role is to enforce the PPE, to be able to recognize the disease and know what needs to be done. Is it a contact? Is it airborne? What do I need to do to protect myself, my patients, the visitors? That's what we need to know. Then we looked at some communicable diseases, and all but scarlet fever have vaccines, and those will be looked at. And then we started looking at non-vaccine communicable diseases. So we looked at intestinal parasites, skin infections, viral and bacterial. Today, we're going to hit on fungal. So I think it's interesting to look at funguses. Let me see what page that is on. That is on 1218, and yes, I am really sorry. There were 4 pages that didn't get included on your objectives thing, and that's pages 1216 to 1220. And I'll tell you what we need to know on that. Turning with me, I'm on the same page in case there's questions. Okay, so at the top of the page, it says the big old long word, dermatophytosis. And that is just this grouping of fungus. If you look over here on your slide and it says it causes these things, this particular type of fungus only goes to the top layer. It doesn't burrow down inside. So that's why, and you name it according to where it's at. So like tinea capitis, that's the scalp. Tinea corporis, body or nails. Tinea puris, groin. Tinea pedis, feet. Thrush is oral, and candidiasis is vaginal or viper dermatitis. Now, I know these are yeast these bottom things, but yeast and thrush are from the same family. Yeast are unicellular. So just know that they're just kind of treated about the same. So if these are a communicable disease, that means if you touch it, you could get it, right? So there's some things that the nurse needs to know. First of all, what is the age of your child? Are they going to be someone who doesn't understand about social distancing and washing their hands? You need to understand the age of your child. If it's tinea capitis, we're going to make sure that they are not sharing hats and combs and things like that, because that's going to be a ringworm on your head. And it can get into that foli, that object, that non-living object, and spread. If you have an opening, you can get it. Your book said something interesting too that I had never really thought about, but it makes sense. A lot of times, if you'll have them wear a scarf or a cap to bed to cover their scalp when they're laying on their bed, you don't have to change the pillowcase every time. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That is your fungal ones, and we treat them with a fungicide, antifungal. Next, we're looking at scabies. I have had scabies. Scabies are icky. Don't like them. It was embarrassing. I was a nurse at the time, but I'd also taught a missions class at our church, and I had a whole bunch of little girls over to stay the night with me, and I studied scabies and went to my doctor because I thought it was hives. And he said, I think it's scabies. And I was like, no, it's hives. And so he said, okay. And it wasn't. And so I ended up getting them all over. But scabies are just these little tiny mites that burrow into the skin. And basically they sleep during the day and they come out at night. And that's when they're having sex and having babies. And you start itching. And the itching is because it's inflammation. Remember, when the body gets something foreign in it, it automatically starts setting up we need the cells here to finish this. So all the cells race to get rid of it, but they can't. So they hide, just like it sounds like. They hide because they don't like during the daytime, and at nighttime they even hide. So the main place you're going to see them, you look at the webs of the fingers. They'll be there. And that's what my doctor did. He looked down, and I didn't have them in my webs. So he said, well, okay. And I don't know that I ever did, but the book says, and we learned the book, we learned the theory. The book says the webs of the fingers, the underwear bands, the groins, places where there are creases where no one might see them, because they really are just looking for a place to live and propagate. And that's their only job. I just don't want them on me. So, to kill them, there is a scabicide that we use. Okay, there's a scabicide that we use. Oh, yes, it is. So you put this lotion on, and usually it's done at nighttime. You put the lotion on the child or the family, leave it on for 8 to 14 hours, and then you have them shower the next day to get it off. So it's only left for a little while, and the whole family needs to be treated because it's prolonged contact. So if you're saying, I need you to go and take this medicine, and anyone that he has been in close contact with, has he had a sleepover? Has he had, is there a grandma that he stays with sometimes? That kind of thing. Every family member is going to need to be treated. So you're instructing. This is what we're looking for. And because it's so itchy, a secondary infection can happen too from the staph, from scratching and opening it up. Okay, here's where I think, hang on. Yes, this is where we get to play a game called Hide the Slides. So before I turn to the next slide, and you guys start panicking, about this time last year was when Corona hit and we had to go home, and something happened to my PowerPoint and they got all confused when they went to the printer. Yours are not in the same order. I'm going to tell you what page numbers they're on, okay? So we're going to take a deep breath because I'm getting ready to hit the next slide. This is the one you should have. You may have that one. That one you have, right? Okay, good. This is the pediculosis. This is lice. Again, again, lice likes me, because you can hide in my hair. I've had it twice now, both my children have had it. Close contact. So if my head rests against the back of something, and I was thinking about an airplane last night, so we're talking about how dirty airplanes can be, and they have lice, and you put your head back there, you could get lice from that. They like to hide in behind the ears and down low on the neck. This is on page 226, and there's a good picture of that little nasty insect on page 1227. I said 226, 1226 and 1227. These are hard to get rid of. You not only have to treat it with this ricocide, but you have to get the nits out. You have to get the eggs and the dead things out. So you're spending a lot of time, you shampoo their hair, and then you get this fine comb, and you're just combing till you get everything out. And it can take a while. And everyone needs to be treated in the family. Okay, so this one is on the bottom of page 340. And I used to be in charge of looking for lice when we went to Falls Creek. If you're a nurse, you're going to get that job, because they just assume all nurses know what lice looks like. So you look. You're going to be the health worker for your group of people that you're with. So you're going to, before you go on a group of things, you might want to check all your kids, make sure everyone's clean. And continued inspection. Both my kids, I didn't catch it. It was at the beauty shop they were caught. Great. Isolation of self-care products for the individual. That just means don't share combs and brushes and hats and anything else. I know a lot of people shave the child's head. That's just because it's easier for them. There's no need to shave the head. You're going to wash everything in very hot water and a hot dryer. And anything that's non-washable is going to go into a bag for 14 days, sealed up, and that's supposed to kill them. And educate the family for what to look for. So when you're looking in their hair, just call the parents over and say, see what I'm looking for? Pull the hair up. Go, see this little thing? That's a lice. That's an egg. This one's dark, so it's this one. So just make sure you talk to them and instruct them. It's not a secret. We want them to be able to look also, so that they don't have to come back here for you guys to look at them. We want them to be educated. That's the nurse's job. Remember, we're containing the diseases. Okay, this is on the bottom of page 340. Or in the middle. This is just a comparison. And really the biggest thing that's different is with the lice, you have to remove the bug. With the scabies, you just kill it because it's underneath the skin. Both of them are very, very contagious. Bed bugs. It should be back on the other page. So one of the hardest things for this is on page 193 to 194. Bed bugs are hard to diagnose because they look like everything else. They also sleep during the day, come out at night. I've been told, and I have not found any research on this, but I've been told that they bite in brief, breakfast, lunch, dinner. I don't know. I've never seen a bed bug, but I guarantee you, a nurse that won't put on a mask and gloves for someone who has a flu will wear head to toe garb before they go into someone's room and have bed bugs. It's the craziest thing. And temp is another one of those itchy, really itchy things. They can get infections from that because the skin is just so irritated from this bite that they get. So really the only way to do it is try to identify it, try to eliminate everything else, and then they need to get someone in there to clean it out, do professional extermination. So you're counseling them, not your fault, you have bed bugs, this is what you're gonna have to do. And if they don't have the resources, you might help them try to find the resources to get that. There's steroids to help with the swelling, and of course your linens and anything personal. This one, they said it's primarily on the arms and legs and trunk, but it also says it's hard to diagnose, so I wouldn't really worry about where it's at, just how we're gonna treat it. We're gonna get exterminators in there, and we're gonna wear protective gear to keep from spreading it. Rickettsial infections. I don't have a page number because this is just a generic. These are infections that are spread by your arthropods, your ticks, fleas, mites. It says on here that they're more common in temperate and tropical climates, but we're going to see an exception to that in a minute. There's always an exception. Bite or exposure may occur without knowledge to the family of the child. So that means that they could get it and you won't even know they have it for a long time. It takes a while before it actually may respond. They might have been on a camping trip 3 weeks ago and all of a sudden they're having a fever. So it's not like it's automatic, it doesn't happen just immediately. This bottom sentence says, illness ranges from self-limiting to fatal. Self-limiting just means it goes away on its own. So things that, diseases is page 341. Diseases that can be caused by rickettsia, the Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is the one we're going to concentrate on. Don't worry about these other three. The Rocky Mountain spotted fever is the more common one. This is back on 338, it's after your Lyme disease. So this is Rocky Mountain spotted fever. This is telling you the name of the little germ that can get this. And it's a bite. So the clinical differentiation between Rocky Mountain and something else is Rocky Mountain has a palmar rash. That means they have a rash on the palms of their hands or the bottoms of their feet. They usually come in with fever, sometimes a headache. So that can be just about anything, right? So as a nurse, when you're doing your head-to-toe assessment, because we don't just look at the fever, we look at the client, the whole client. What does it look like? Well, you start noticing he's got little red dots on their palms or on their feet. The big thing is, as a nurse, you want to get that tick off. Because even though they've been infected, you still want that tick off. So you're going to search the body and find the tick and get them removed. Now, there used to be an old wives' tale that said you had to get the head or it stays in. They've done research and that is not true. Just grab it with some tweezers and pull it out. We use tweezers because that way if it erupts, you don't get the disease on your hand, whatever's in that blood. Because remember, he's carrying diseases. If he bursts in your hand, then you're going to get that stuff on your hand. So use tweezers and gloves to get that taken off. I'll tell you that was on page 1228. There's a chart, and it's just at the top of that chart. It's in small. I thought it was important enough because we do see that around here. There are certain diseases that emergency rooms, doctor's offices, hospitals have to report to the state, and this is one of them. So there's one of those that does get reported, and it does happen around here. Lyme disease, yes, Lyme disease. So, Rocky Mountain spotted fever and Lyme disease can look a lot alike. There are some major differences. This is the exception, this is back on page 338. This is the exception because this was originally found in the northeast coast. You know, it said at the beginning that rickettsials are usually found in your tropical settings. Well, it's not tropical up northeast, it's cold. And that's why it kind of boggled their mind. My dad actually had this. We lived in Missouri, and I was just little bitty, and he came up with this high fever, 104, they put him in the hospital, he was there for a week, the doctor said, this was, back in the dark ages, said, we don't know what to do, go ahead, take him home, prepare a funeral, because we can't fix him, something's wrong. Well, he got home and it went away, but he's always had a rash on his right leg, that little, not bullseye now, but it was a little red rash, and he started having arthritis. So I tell you this story for a reason. So he had that for about 30 years. He always had arthritis in that leg, played tennis, but he would always have to ice everything down. He was reading a Reader's Digest, which used to be our internet, and it would said Lyme's disease. And he said, I think I have Lyme's disease. This is 30 years later. He calls his doctor, gets a test for it, it comes back positive. They treat him, give an antibiotic, and he's fine. Doesn't have the arthritis anymore. Crazy, huh? So, Lyme's disease is from a tick. They bite, and then you can get it later on, and it starts off with a bullseye rash. This is on page 1228 also. This one's not, I don't think it's in the chart. They've got it actually on the page. So the bullseye rash is very distinctive. The center of it is kind of hard, and then it kind of circles out, and then you have a ring. So it really does look like a bullseye. You can, on page 1229, there's a picture of it. Now that does go away, and then you just have a flat rash, just little red dots on it. But at first, the first part of it is the bullseye. The problem is it can cause things besides arthritis. It can cause central nervous disorder. My mom said when he had that really high fever, of course he was out of his mind, of course, and that he had been forgetting things for the next 30 years too, but I think all that was cleared up too. They get the rash everywhere, not just where they were bit, except the palms of their hands. Remember Rocky Mountain spotted fever, palms of the hand. Lyme disease, not on the palms of the hands. So that's how you're going to discern the difference whenever you get into a clinical setting. There are antibiotics they can give them, and they're very effective. So the moral of these two situations is, as nurses, we need to teach people to not get ticks. And you do that by wearing the right clothes. So you want to tell them to wear long sleeves, where they have buttons on the end of them to keep ticks from riding up. Sticking their pants down into their socks. I did an emergency medical conference up in Yellowstone 2 years ago, and they hammered this in our heads. You need to make sure that you are teaching people not to be exposed to ticks. Wear the DEET. Your book says that children can have trouble with DEET, but it also says if they are exposed, overexposed, that means they're spraying it on continuously, or the mom's really a little neurotic and she's every 5 minutes spraying them, that's when they can have trouble. If you're using the DEET according to the instructions, they're fine, okay? And then you want to make sure that you're teaching them to check everyone over at the end of the evening. Is everyone clear? Ticks like me, mosquitoes, never bite me. I can walk into a rainforest and get one bite, everybody else get hundreds. They don't like my skin. But ticks love me, and so I have to have my husband look in my hair whenever we get back from a fishing trip or something, because I'll have a tick in my hair. So you got to know to have someone check you over to look and see if you have any ticks hiding anywhere. It says to keep them, prevent complications for progression. I'm just saying, it starts with the rash, and it can lead to other problems. It says central nervous system, cardiac, muscular, skeletal, which is your arthritis. So we're going to identify it, remove the tick, start them on medication. That's the nurse's role. For that, we're going to do prevention. If someone comes up to you and says, he got a tick bite a week ago, or he got a tick bite a couple of months ago, but he's been running a fever, or you can suspect it. If they start having a fever or a skin lesion, a viral infection, you might go ahead and check to make sure that they haven't been bit by a tick. Did you go someplace where you might have been exposed to a tick bite? As nurses, we get to play detective. And that page for the DEET, where I was talking about that, is on page 1229. It says children have experienced serious neurological complications from frequent and excessive application. That's the clue. You know, don't be afraid to use DEET on your children, it's okay. Lyme disease, and again, this is just talking about what it looks like, and I already told you about the different stages. Don't focus on the stages. Don't focus on the stages. Just know the identification, what separates Lyme disease from another disease, what would it look like, and what am I going to do about it? Prevent, tick removal, supportive care, and antibiotics. It says it right there. That's the nurse's job. Okay. So this is on page 341. This is getting further into what the nurse does. Prevent from exposure. We already talked about using your DEET and wearing long sleeves and long pants, tucking the pants in. I also said to use light clothes so that you can see the tick. And then also the permethrin treated clothing has really shown that it does a good job. So if they're going on a Boy Scout trip, you might invest in one of those shirts that has the permethrin treated in it. If it's a bite, you're going to make sure you do your wound care to make sure they don't get a secondary infection from staph. Okay, we're going to take a break. We're going to just kind of breathe deep, and in 10 minutes, it'll be 10 till, we'll come back and finish out this.